So the question about your contracts and your payment terms, yeah, well, there's a learning curve on that one. But here's what you've got to realize is that most procurement departments are set up to make money by delaying paying you. And they're going to treat you, in many cases, especially if you're working with large companies, the same way they treat large vendors. So you have one little contract coming in. Honestly, I've seen procurement teams put in enough man hours that the procurement team man hours, or people hours, I guess is the better way to say it, is more than the actual value of what they're paying you in the contract. It's ridiculous, but they have one way of operating. I've seen them come back and say, oh, great, and our terms are 120 days. And it's like, nope, I don't operate in that kind of cash flow. And so what you simply do is explain it. So I had a client once that said, literally, our terms are 120 days net, but you can, of course, get it paid sooner through our vendor processor for payments if you give them a discount or whatever on it. And I said, my terms are 30 days. And they will push back and say, well, we can't do that. And I'll say, okay. And I had this happen. I said, great, just, please tell the, executive vice president of so-and-so that I'm sorry I can't work with him. And then they rethink about it and they find a way that they can actually do that. They just don't want to because it's more work for them. Also, I explained to them, look, I can't operate on 4 or 6 month terms because I don't have the cash flow. Right now, this work is going to be 35% or 50% of my billable revenue. Would you wait 6 months to start getting your paycheck if you joined your company? You wouldn't. It's a similar thing here. I'm not a vendor. I'm a consultant. I'm a business partner. It may be just words to you, but they're meaningful words to me. So you have to be really clear about that. Another thing that I learned to do early on that has been a lifesaver is I put into my contract, by the way, you have to have one appointed senior enough individual that can resolve all issues with procurement, contracting, payment, payroll, whatever it is, somebody that's your go-to person. Otherwise, you'll get 7 or 10 different names of outsourced companies you have to talk to, and it's no one's problem but yours. And it can take hours and hours and hours of basically billable time to get paid. So you really need to think through exactly what you're going to do and be willing to be firm on that. Otherwise, you could find yourself sucked into those long payment terms. Only time that's good is if you've got a huge cash reserve you're sitting on and you can wait, then the money's coming later. Oh, it feels like Christmas after the work is done, but it's not a good way to operate. Another aspect of contracts to think about is how do you actually write a contract? And I've seen tons of them. So there's 2 things that could happen. 1, you use your contract. 2, you use theirs. If you're using theirs, it can be a bit of a pain because you're going to have to read through all of it and you may need an attorney because there's a lot of legalese in there and there's some things that you need to avoid. Because the contracts as written by their procurement department, especially if it's a company of any size, are going to be completely skewed in their terms and leave you no protection. And so you need to balance those terms given the fact that you also don't have a big legal department behind you or endless resources should something go wrong. And you can explain to them that's what you're doing, but you need to make sure that you are comfortable redlining their contract to have someone doing it. What I always do is I always start just by sending them a contract so we have that as a beginning point. I've had them come back and say, no, we want to use ours. I'm like, great, you can see what's in mine. Please make sure that anything that doesn't match that is not in yours, or if it is, we're going to have to talk about it. I created my first contract, I believe, using just a LegalZoom template because I used LegalZoom initially to set up my LLC. And I modified it and just did the best I could. What I did to do that is I reached out to my friends who are in a consulting space and I asked like 6 or 8 of them, can you send me your blanket contract so I can just see it and see what's in there? And I begged and borrowed and stole the best things I thought and kind of weaseled them into mine and made my own contract. Now, I'm not sure if it's the world's greatest contract, but at least I'd done some research and I had it based upon something that was a decent template and format. The last thing I've learned, though, is that the contract does set a bit of a tone. And if you're dealing with organizations and you feel the confidence to do this, something I've seen done that I'm getting much better at doing now, is having my contract be a lot more vague. Basically be more about the relationship and say, look, we'll work things through, we'll have conversations, but the contract itself becomes the social contract for how we're going to work together. So I do some work with another company. You can find them at workpeople.com, WERQ people.com. Ilana and the team there are wonderful. They're just a phenomenal company, and I love doing work with them and love being a part of that kind of their ecosystem. Their contract is wonderful because it basically talks about how this is a business partnership. We'll work through challenges that come up, and it's very, very limited on the legalese and the legal terms. I looked at it the first time and thought, there's no way procurement departments are going to accept this. But you know what? They accept it the same way that they accept When I say 30 days are my terms, not 120, and tell the EVP or the CEO that she can't have her consultant because that doesn't work for you, and they find a way to do it, they also find a way to accept those kind of contracts. So really think about, can I set up a contract that has the right tone for how I want to work, which is not on a quid pro quo legalese basis, but is on a relationship basis that allows for some movement and some flexibility on both parts.